My name is Sonia Vale, and I serve in the Navy. The courtroom smells like old wood and copier toner, the scent that clings to county buildings where people come to lose or reclaim their lives. Dad's voice sliced through it. "You'll leave with nothing," he barked at my mother, jabbing a finger as if she were a stranger who'd taken something from him. Mom's hands trembled around a pen. Her signature shook across the divorce agreement while the papers fluttered under the air vent, like even the documents didn't want to be part of this. He looked so proud of himself. Pressed gray suit, gold tie clip catching the fluorescent light. His lawyer sat smug beside him. Behind them, Veronica, his mistress, crossed her legs and leaned forward with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. In the back row, my grandmother sat rigid, pearls shining at her throat, eyes full of judgments she'd been sharpening for years. I removed my navy cap, dress blues heavier than usual, as if every memory had stitched extra weight into the seams, and stood. "Your Honor, may I approach?" The judge, a woman in her 50s, with silver threading her hair and eyes bright and unsentimental, studied me for a beat and nodded. I stepped forward, a plain white envelope in my hand. When I set it on the bench, it made the softest sound, but to me it was thunder. "This," I said, "may help clarify some confusion around my father's financial statements." Dad scoffed. "Oh, this should be good." The judge broke the seal and unfolded the papers. The room went quiet except for the whisper of paper. At first her face stayed neutral, then the corners of her mouth twitched. She chuckled, then laughed, a warm, disbelieving sound like light slipping past storm clouds. "Oh," she said softly, glancing at my father. "This is good." Dad's grin fell apart, color draining from his face. The bailiff shifted his stance. Hope sparked in Mom's tired eyes. The gavel came down once. "Recess for 10 minutes. Do not leave the building." Chairs scraped. Veronica's smile faltered. Grandma clutched her purse tighter. I didn't move. I just watched Dad trying to compute what I'd put in the envelope. I whispered, "You shouldn't have underestimated Mom." 2 months earlier, I never would have imagined standing in uniform defending my mother from my own father. Back then, Mom still wore her wedding band and cooked dinner every night, even when he didn't come home until midnight. He claimed late meetings. The receipts told stories about champagne instead of coffee, hotels instead of offices. When I returned from deployment last year, the small things spoke first. Mom's laughter had quieted, unopened envelopes piled on the counter, and Dad's voice sharpened whenever she spoke. He'd been my hero once, the man who taught me to parallel park and sand a deck, who stood hand over heart when I was commissioned. Somewhere, pride had calcified into arrogance, and confidence curdled into cruelty. I got a short leave and came home to Indiana. The house felt smaller than I remembered, quieter, like the air had been emptied and then rearranged. Lemon cleaner and tension. Mom sat at the kitchen table sorting mail she didn't open, insurance statements, property taxes, bank notices lined up in tidy, useless stacks. "You're early," she said. "Got a few extra days," I answered, dropping my duffel and hugging her. She felt smaller. Her hair, once auburn, had grayed more than I'd realized. Dad came home after 9, smelling like expensive cologne and bourbon, not drywall or dust. He loosened his tie without looking at either of us and went straight to the fridge. "Did you pay the credit card yet, or am I supposed to do everything myself?" Mom murmured that she'd handled it. He said, "Good," took a beer, and went out to the patio. He didn't need to yell. He'd trained her to flinch before sound. The next days, patterns rose like fingerprints dusted under light. Every grocery receipt filed in a folder with sticky notes. Too much on produce. Use coupons. The thermostat buttons taped over with "Do Not Touch" scrawled across it. The TV remote locked in a drawer labeled "Entertainment Expenses." When Mom bought a small gift for my cousin, he scolded her for being wasteful. "He's just trying to keep us from overspending," she breathed later. The excuse of someone who must live inside someone else's weather. Sunday dinner detonated without raising voices. Dad invited his mother and his new business partner, Veronica. She arrived in heels too tall for our steps, holding a wine bottle that probably cost more than Mom's weekly grocery run. "I've heard so much about you," she said, offering a manicured hand. "Your father says you're a hero." Dad's face tightened. "It's our daughter, Veronica." Mom's hands shook, setting the roast down. Grandma sniffed. Linda, dear, the potatoes are a little dry. Perhaps Veronica could share her cream sauce recipe. Small talk knives glinted. Veronica laughed too loudly at Dad's jokes and leaned too close when she refilled his glass. At one point, I caught a fragment. Michigan next month, she murmured. We'll make it quick. Dad's glance was the nervous kind a liar calls casual. Later, he raised a toast to new beginnings. Mom whispered so softly only I heard her, to honesty. I saw the real estate flyer for a lakeside place peeking from his briefcase when he reached for the wine opener. He realized I saw it and shut the case. A corner of silver flashed inside, the kind of flash drive you label when it matters. Client files. That night, Mom rinsed dishes like they were louder than her heartbeat. He's talking to a lawyer, she said. A divorce lawyer? I asked. She nodded. He says I've neglected the marriage. Maybe I'll just sign. It's easier. I looked at her thin hands, the indent where a ring had lived for decades. You taught me to fight fair, I said. But this isn't fair, and if he wants a fight, he's going to get one, by the book. Truth lives in the logs. It's the first thing the Navy taught me, and the only thing I trusted. I started with public records at the county portal. A deed transfer request showed our house moving from joint ownership to Dad alone, filed on a day my mother was 3 states away, visiting me on base. I printed the record and stared at the timestamp pulsing on the screen like a siren. I called the notary whose stamp marked the deed. She chirped that both parties came in together. Later in her ledger, Mom's ID number was missing. No lawful notary does that. Either the notary lied or someone signed for Mom. Forgery isn't a marital sin. It's a felony. I took Mom to the credit union. With her written consent, a manager printed 3 months of transfers, $5,000, every 2 weeks pulled from joint savings into a foster business account. Property taxes, Mom whispered. Property taxes don't go to business accounts, I said gently. I kept my voice level as I would in a squall. Soft isn't the opposite of strong. I called an elder and family law attorney, Henson, whose kindness was practical, the kind that gets things done. We spread out documents on his desk. Bank records, deed copies, screenshots, dates. He flipped pages in silence, then tapped a line. Once a divorce petition is filed, automatic restraining orders apply. No asset moves without court approval. If he transferred after filing, judges care. He looked at me. He's constructing a narrative. Your mother incompetent with finances. Him, the responsible custodian. We both knew what that meant if he got to define it first. At home, I went methodical. A binder with tabs, accounts, properties, communications, notary, and a 1-page summary leading each section with dates and sources. I printed photos of Mom and me at the Navy Museum from the date the deed was signed. I drafted a chain of custody note for every digital file I copied, because truth without provenance becomes just another story. That week, Dad performed normal, humming as if the house were an orchestra and he, the conductor. He kissed Mom's forehead in the morning and never said thank you for the eggs he ate. That night, when he drove off to meet clients, I opened his office door. The room smelled like tobacco and paper and something I can only call arrogance. Every pen aligned, every stack squared. Behind the bookshelf, I heard it, a faint electronic hum, a small safe. I slipped on latex gloves, pressed my ear to the keypad, and tried the rhythm I'd seen him use. 4 digits, pause, 2 digits. Nothing. I tried again, slower. Wedding anniversary? The safe beeped red, another pattern. My heart thudded in my throat. Outside, a car door slammed. Headlights swept across the blinds, rolling bars of light over my hands. I froze, breath held, palm hovering over the metal face of the safe. Tires crunched. The engine idled, then faded down the block. I stepped back, pulse loud enough to count the seconds. Not tonight, not yet. I closed the office, reset each object by memory, clicked the light off, and stood in the dark hallway until my heartbeat matched the old wall clock. Justice, I told myself, is a long corridor you walk without running. I turned toward the kitchen where a plain envelope waited on the table. I wrote one word on it in neat block letters: truth. In the morning, Dad's SUV sat at the curb like a promise. He whistled on his way to the coffee maker. "Your mother says you're helping with the bills," he said, lips curling. "That's sweet." I smiled like a sailor under inspection. Polite, neutral, unreadable. Just trying to make things easier. He lifted his mug in a mock toast. "That's my girl." He didn't see the ledger copies tucked under my arm, or the way my eyes mapped exits and clocks and the precise location of the nearest printer. 2 months later, that white envelope touched the judge's bench and sounded like thunder. That night, I couldn't shake the hum of the safe behind the bookshelf. It was like the sound had crawled under my skin and kept buzzing long after silence returned. Sleep was a stranger. By dawn, I'd convinced myself of one thing. If I hesitated any longer, he'd move the money beyond reach. I waited until Mom left for errands, then slipped into his office again. Sunlight angled through the blinds, striping the mahogany desk like prison bars. I knelt beside the bookshelf, pressed my ear to the keypad, and closed my eyes. I could almost hear his voice saying numbers over the years, birthdays, anniversaries, victories he thought he'd earned alone. The first code failed. The second, too. I tried the date etched on his wedding band. Beep, pause, beep, green light. The safe door clicked open. Inside sat 3 manila folders stacked with precision and a small silver flash drive engraved client files. The air smelled faintly metallic, like a secret breathing too long in darkness. I slipped on gloves and pulled out the folders. Assets, accounts, credentials. The first contained property deeds, including one for a lakeside cabin in Michigan I'd never heard of. The owner was a holding company, Benver LLC. I didn't need to guess who Ver was. My stomach clenched. The second folder listed bank names, 4 of them, and 1 offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Transfers in neat recurring rows, dates matching those $5,000 withdrawals from the joint account. The numbers formed a quiet rhythm of betrayal. The third folder held 2 papers, a handwritten list of usernames and passwords, and a printed email from vase@hayesdesigns.com. "Ben, I can't wait for next month. Once everything's settled, we can finally live like we planned. I'll start looking at houses in Naples. Maybe by Christmas, we'll be done with all this drama. Love you, V." Naples, Florida. His endgame wasn't divorce, it was escape. I stared at the screensaver on his computer, a looping slideshow of family photos, Mom smiling in moments she probably didn't remember as happy. For a second, pity and fury wrestled inside me. Then I slid the flash drive into my pocket. I copied everything later onto a clean USB labeled Evidence A and placed the original back exactly where I'd found it. Precision was my shield. By the time I met Attorney Henson again, my binder had doubled in thickness. He examined the offshore statements in silence, then exhaled softly. "Lieutenant Vale, this isn't just divorce fraud. These transfers cross into criminal territory." "I know," I said. "If you present this in family court, it could trigger a federal case." "Then let it." He leaned back, folding his hands. "It'll destroy his reputation, maybe yours by association." I thought of the Navy motto carved over the academy gate: honor, courage, commitment. "My reputation can survive the truth," I said. "His can't." Henson nodded slowly. "Then we prepare for both fronts." He drafted a summary for the judge and sealed 1 extra envelope. "Keep this separate," he said. "Your mother's protection and your father's mirror." That phrase, his mirror, followed me home like an echo. That evening, Dad returned from work humming Sinatra, acting invincible. He poured himself bourbon and leaned against the counter. "You know, Sonia, once this is over, I could use someone like you at the company, someone who knows discipline." I looked up from the dish I was drying. "What kind of discipline?" "The kind that keeps family matters private," he said, swirling the drink. "Your mother's overreacting. We could make this transition clean. You help me, and I'll make sure she's taken care of." My heart thudded. "Taken care of," I repeated. "Like a dependent?" He smiled thinly. "You make it sound ungrateful. I've built everything you see." "No," I said quietly. "Mom did. You just signed it." His jaw twitched. "Watch your tone, Lieutenant." "Always do," I replied. He chuckled without humor. "You've got your mother's stubborn streak. It'll cost you someday." When he left the kitchen, I realized my hands were trembling, not from fear, but restraint. It would have been easier to scream. But discipline means silence until it's time to speak. The next morning, I mailed certified copies of every record to Henson's office and one to a secure Navy legal contact. just in case. If anything happened to me, truth would already be on its way. For 2 weeks, Dad acted normal. Flowers for Mom, extra smiles, sudden charity donations. The guilty often try to launder their image before judgment. I stayed watchful. Then one night, I noticed headlights idling outside our house. His SUV, engine running. No one stepped out. I noted the time, the plate, and called non-emergency dispatch. Habit from service, log everything. By the time a patrol car cruised by, the SUV had vanished. Mom stood behind me in her robe, eyes wide. He was just parked there? Maybe making sure the locks work, I said, forcing calm. She tried to smile but failed. I don't want this to get ugly. It already is, I said gently. We're just bringing daylight. The next morning, Henson called. The hearing date's confirmed. 2 weeks. Prepare your exhibits. The judge will need clarity, not drama. Clarity's all I have, I said. That day, I spent hours printing, tabbing, and cross-referencing. The rhythm steadied me. Truth, once organized, becomes unshakable. But at night, the quiet worked differently. I caught Mom staring at the window, clutching her coffee cup long after it went cold. He'll be furious when he finds out what you've done, she whispered. He'll be furious when the judge does, I said. She gave me a look, half fear, half awe. You sound like your father. Only stronger, I said, only honest. A week later, I drove 2 hours to a notary's office, the same Janet Morris who'd stamped that forged deed. Her face drained when I asked to see her April ledger. That's confidential, she said. If there's a legal dispute, your ledger could protect you, I told her. If someone used your stamp without you knowing, that's a crime, not yours. She hesitated, then fetched a worn notebook. April 12th, here it is. Her brow furrowed. No ID listed for the wife. That's odd. I photographed the entry with her consent and had her sign a brief statement confirming the omission. Proof wasn't loud, it just needed to exist. Driving home, I thought about how people confuse silence for weakness. Sometimes silence is a countdown. When I got back, Mom was sorting laundry. I set the photo on the counter. This ledger clears you completely. She touched the printout with trembling fingers. What happens next? We take it to court, I said. She swallowed. He'll hate you for it. Maybe, I said, but he'll respect the evidence. That night, rain fell in slow, heavy sheets, drumming against the windows. I spread every document across the table, deeds, bank statements, notary records, emails, and stared at the mosaic of betrayal until the words blurred. For the first time, I understood why Mom had stayed so long. Control isn't always visible. It's the water you live in until someone names it. I labeled one final folder. Truth. Master copy, and placed the sealed envelope Henson had given me on top. I didn't know exactly what he'd put inside, but I trusted its purpose. Before bed, I checked the lock on the front door twice. Through the curtains, I could see Dad's porch light still burning across town at his rented condo. Somewhere inside, he was probably practicing his courtroom smile in the mirror. Let him, I thought. Tomorrow, I'd give him a new mirror. One made of facts he couldn't polish. The courthouse in Marion County looked like a brick ship anchored to the square. Iron railings, a flag cracking in the wind, the faint smell of floor polish that never leaves old buildings. Mom and I parked at 8:30. She wore the navy suit we'd found at a second-hand boutique, carefully tailored, dignity hemmed into the seams. Her hands shook as she clutched her purse, but her chin held steady. You don't have to speak today, I said, adjusting my tie clip. Just breathe. Let the documents do the talking. She nodded, though her eyes slid to the steps where Dad was already laughing with his attorney, Jeff, the picture of a man about to win an election. Veronica stood near him in a white blazer, the bright, brittle kind of smile people wear when they need everything to go their way. Grandma Dorothy hovered a few feet behind, pearls smaller than usual, but present. When Dad noticed me in uniform, his grin widened. Lieutenant Vale, reporting for family duty? He murmured as we passed. Something like that, I said. He leaned close. Don't embarrass yourself, or your mother. I met his eyes. We're done being embarrassed. Inside, the air cooled and thickened. The bailiff announced the court, and Judge Hawkins took the bench. Silver hair, clear eyes, a posture that said she'd captained storms bigger than ours. Foster versus Foster, the clerk called. Jeff rose smoothly. Your Honor, my client, Mr. Benjamin Foster, has provided comprehensive records. We request equitable distribution of assets and primary ownership of the family home, with a reasonable support arrangement for Mrs. Foster. He called Dad first. Dad settled into the witness chair like it had his name etched on it. "I've shouldered the financial burden," he said, voice soft with practiced sincerity. "Linda hasn't worked in years. I've done my best to provide." He described Mom as inattentive to bills, overwhelmed by details, a kind woman simply out of her depth. His hands folded, thumb brushing thumb, the choreography of credibility. "Did your wife participate in business decisions?" Jeff asked. "Access, sure, but interest, not really," Dad said, eyes flicking toward the gallery where Veronica sat. "I kept us afloat." Henson rose with deliberate calm. "Your Honor, with the court's permission, we'd like to submit one consolidated exhibit. It may clarify inconsistencies." He nodded to me. I stood. My dress shoes clicked once against the tile. Steady, measured. I placed the white envelope on the bench. "Please see the notarized deed transfer marked 12B, I said, and the notary's ledger page noted on top. The courtroom soundscape shrank to paper, the slide from envelope, the soft rasp as Judge Hawkins unfolded pages. Her face stayed unreadable at first. Then a corner of her mouth lifted. She made a low sound, almost a chuckle, and glanced at Jeff. "Counsel, the deed transfer was notarized April 12th. "Yes, Your Honor," Jeff said too brightly. Judge Hawkins turned to Mom. "Mrs. Foster, where were you on April 12th? Mom straightened, voice steady. "In Norfolk, Virginia, visiting my daughter on base. I have flight records and photographs." The judge looked back down, and the notary ledger lists no ID for Mrs. Foster. She lifted her gaze to Dad. Flat, cool. "That is not a clerical error, Mr. Foster. That is forgery adjacent, at best." A soft ripple moved through the gallery. Dad's smile faltered. "There has to be a mistake." Henson remained on his feet. "Additionally, Your Honor, please turn to the tab marked Benver LLC. Documentation shows transfers from the marital account into a company co-owned with Ms. Veronica Hayes." Veronica's face went still, like a porcelain figure set in a sudden draft. "We also include a schedule of transfers made after temporary financial restraints were in effect." "After," Judge Hawkins repeated, mildly, which in her voice was more dangerous than a shout. "Yes, Your Honor," Henson said. "Dates, amounts, and destination accounts are highlighted." The judge scanned, eyes narrowing, then opened the second stack. Chain of custody notes, verified statements from the credit union manager, a signed note from the notary, confirming the missing ID. Her mouth curved further. She laughed, quiet, genuine, incredulous, in the way a person laughs when truth finally has receipts. "Well," she said softly, "this is good." Dad shot up from his chair. "What is this, a circus?" "Sit down, Mr. Foster," Judge Hawkins said, without raising her voice. He sat. "Your Honor," Jeff began, "we request a brief recess to review." "Denied," the judge said. "Bailiff, please notify the court's liaison to the Financial Crimes Unit that documentary packets will be ready by noon." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Color seeped from Dad's face. Veronica leaned in, whispering, "Ben, what does that mean?" The judge answered for him without looking over. "It means potential violations beyond this courtroom, Ms. Hayes." She set the papers aside. "Here is what we're going to do," she said, voice level. "Temporary, exclusive occupancy of the marital residence is granted to Mrs. Foster. Mr. Foster will vacate within 48 hours, taking personal effects only. No furnishings leave the home pending inventory. Temporary spousal support begins immediately, amount to be calculated from prior standard of living and need." Her gaze pinned Dad. "A financial restraining order remains in force. Additional transfers, any, will invite sanctions. Forensic accounting is ordered. Both parties will provide full disclosures within 14 days. Do not test me on the definition of full." Dad's mouth opened, closed. Jeff touched his sleeve, the universal sign for stop digging. Grandma's chin tipped higher, but her eyes, just for a heartbeat, looked like someone had pulled a rug she'd been standing on for decades. "Anything further?" the judge asked. No one had anything they dared to say. "We'll reconvene at 2 for temporary figures." The gavel came down, one precise crack that sounded like a cord snapping. Outside in the corridor, voices churned in low, shocked tones. Dad didn't meet my eyes. Veronica reapplied lipstick with shaking hands, as if restoring color to her mouth could restore the ground under her. Grandma followed them out with tiny, exact steps. Mom and I went to the cafeteria. The chili was too salty. The coffee smelled like it had been punished for existing. We ate a few bites because steadiness needs calories. Through the window, Dad paced the courtyard, gesturing at a phone, the gestures of a man trying to barter with the tide. "He'll say I ruined him," Mom whispered. "You didn't ruin him," I said. "He did. We just stopped him from taking you along." Back in the courtroom, Judge Hawkins returned like a captain to her bridge and steered us through figures. The numbers weren't generous. They were correct. That felt better. When we finally left, the sky had shifted from courthouse gray to an ordinary Midwestern blue. A school bus rattled past. A pickup idled at the light. Flags popped in the breeze. Normal life, undramatic and beautiful, because it was ours again. At home, I went to work. Practical is a language my hands speak when my heart needs translating. I wrote a checklist. Change online banking passwords. Call each credit bureau for freezes. Switch utilities to Mom with a verbal password. Photograph every room for inventory. List serial numbers on electronics and tools. Buy a fireproof lockbox. Create a legal-only email. Turn on text alerts for any account activity. We worked side by side, Mom smoothing folded sweaters, me labeling folders, both of us breathing like we'd forgotten how. Around dusk, Mr. Elson from next door pushed his mower across our lawn, the old-school kind that hums instead of roars. He nodded once and kept going, not staring at Mom so she wouldn't have to be brave for him. When he finished, the yard smelled like cut summer. Quiet gifts are the ones that rebuild you. Dad's calls started at 8. We let the first two go to voicemail. Rage, then charm, then bargaining. "We had a good run, Linda," he said in one message, nostalgia slick on the words. "Don't burn it down." Mom listened once, then hit delete. "He loved control," she said. "Not to me, not to the room, just to the air where control had lived." "He didn't love me." I was closing blinds when headlights slid over the ceiling. His SUV idled at the curb, lights off. He didn't get out. The engine purred like a dare. I noted the time and plate again and called non-emergency. The dispatcher recognized the address from the court that day and sent a cruiser to swing by. Red Blue washed the windows. The SUV slipped away. We made tea and didn't drink it. Sleep felt far, but the body insists on limits. Mom finally drifted off, breath deepening. I walked the house, front door, back door, window latches, a ship's night tour on dry land. The fridge hummed. The wall clock ticked. Somewhere a dog barked twice and gave up. Morning brought a brown envelope from the court, signed temporary orders, official and unambiguous. Beneath it sat another envelope, cream with slanted handwriting I recognized from childhood birthday cards. "Please meet me tomorrow afternoon," it read. "Just once. Your grandmother." Mom read over my shoulder. "You don't owe her anything," she said softly. "I know," I said. The paper felt strangely light in my hand. I want to hear what she thinks she knows. We spent the afternoon with practical things that feel like prayer when you do them right. New passwords, a lockbox slid behind winter coats, the legal-only email tested until Mom's fingers stopped fumbling. After dinner, we stood at the bedroom doorway and looked at the room without his swagger in it. Just a bed, 2 lamps, and a window facing the maple. "I thought I'd die in this house," Mom said. "You get to live in it," I answered. When the house finally quieted, I sat at the kitchen table and opened my notebook to the page where I'd written one word, truth. I drew a line beneath it and added 2 more, in block letters that felt like a vow. Peace. Steady. Tomorrow I'd take Grandma's letter to a corner booth and ask the question sitting on my tongue since the gavel fell. Why did you help him do it? And whatever answer came, I'd hold it up to the same mirror I'd held to Dad. All edges, no polish, facts like daylight. Because justice had arrived. Now came the harder part, keeping the lights on. Miller's Diner still smelled like bacon grease and burnt coffee, exactly as it had when I was a kid. The booths were the same cracked red vinyl, the same sugar caddies missing half their packets. Grandma Dorothy sat in the corner booth by the window, shoulders drawn in, pearls gone, hands folded like she was waiting for a verdict. When she looked up, her eyes startled me. Not hard anymore, just tired. "Thank you for coming," she said. I slid into the opposite seat. "You said you wanted to talk." She nodded and wrapped her hands around the coffee cup even before the waitress filled it. "Benjamin's being indicted," she said quietly. "You probably already know." "I do," I said. "The investigators called Mom this morning. She's cooperating." Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. "They came to my house, too. Took boxes of his files. He hid money in my name. Retirement accounts, small investments. I didn't know. At least..." She trailed off. "I think I didn't." She looked down at her cup as if answers might rise with the steam. For the first time, I saw not the matriarch who'd judged every casserole and report card, but a woman who'd mistaken control for love so long she'd forgotten the difference. "He fooled all of us," she whispered. "Not Mom," I said. Dorothy's eyes flicked up, and for a heartbeat the old pride returned. Then it softened. "No, not your mother." The waitress poured her coffee and moved on. Dorothy stirred in silence. "I came to say I'm sorry," she said at last. "I believed him when he said she was ungrateful. I told myself he was protecting what he built. I thought she made him miserable." Her voice broke a little. "I see now that control is just another kind of fear. He inherited that from me." I didn't answer right away. Anger would have been easy, but what good was fury to an old woman already choking on regret? Silence can hold forgiveness better than words sometimes. "When you stood up in that courtroom," she continued, "I saw your grandfather in you. You know he served too, World War II, Pacific Fleet. He used to say, 'Courage isn't noise, it's steadiness.' You were steady, you and your mother, both." "She just forgot it for a while," I said. Dorothy nodded, eyes shining. "She reminded me what grace looks like. I don't expect her forgiveness, but I hope she'll let me see her, maybe tend those roses with her again." "She will," I said, "if you come with honesty." "I can manage that," she murmured. We sat without speaking while the courthouse clock across the square struck noon. Then she reached across the table, hand trembling. "You've done what I never had the courage to do, Sonia. You broke the pattern." I left cash under the saucer and stood. Maybe, or maybe I just stopped pretending. Outside, the air smelled like rain on hot pavement. The courthouse flag snapped overhead. For the first time, the sound didn't feel like judgment. It felt like motion, time moving forward. When I got home, Mom was in the garden wearing her straw hat, humming softly as she pruned the rose bushes. The same roses she'd nearly let die last summer were bursting now, small red fists of defiance. She looked up when I walked down the path. "How is your grandmother?" "Human," I said. Mom smiled faintly. "That's progress." We sat on the porch steps with glasses of iced tea, cicadas tuning up in the maples. I told her everything Dorothy had said. She listened, eyes on the roses. When I finished, she set her glass down. "I used to hate her," she said, "but hate's heavy. I think I'll let her visit. She's his mother, but she's also just a woman who built her world on the wrong foundation." "Guess that makes us the reconstruction crew," I said. She laughed softly. "Then we'll build with honesty this time." The mail truck rattled to a stop out front. The driver waved, dropped a small package, and rolled on. Inside was a plain folder stamped with the Department of the Navy seal. I slid it open carefully. "Lieutenant Sonia Vale, the Secretary of the Navy commends your off-duty assistance in matters of civilian justice and family welfare. Your conduct reflects the highest traditions of the United States Navy. You are authorized 5 days of commendation leave, effective immediately." Mom's fingers touched the page. "Your father will see that in the paper," she said. "Maybe," I said, "but it's not about him anymore." "No," she agreed. "It's about peace." We spent the rest of the afternoon clearing the garage, boxes labeled holiday, taxes, Ben's tools. Dust settled on our hair and clothes, but somehow the light felt cleaner. Every item we kept or tossed was a small act of ownership. Around sunset, a car engine rumbled up the driveway. Dorothy's old Buick. She stepped out slowly, carrying a pie tin. Mom froze. I touched her arm. "You don't have to." She straightened. "I want to." I stayed on the porch while they met halfway down the walk. Dorothy held out the pie. "Pineapple, your favorite," she said. Mom took it, hands trembling. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Mom said quietly, "Thank you." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a doorway. They talked for a while under the maple tree, their voices low and even. No shouting, no tears, just two women cataloging what was left and what might still grow. The sunset turned their shadows long across the lawn. I leaned on the porch railing, listening to the sound of the leaves, the slow rhythm of reconciliation. 3 weeks later, we were back at the courthouse for the final hearing. The room felt smaller without the tension of battle. Dad wasn't there. His attorney appeared alone, stone-faced. The prosecutor's office had other plans for him now. Judge Hawkins flipped through the decree and spoke with the same clarity as always. Permanent possession of the marital residence to Mrs. Linda Foster. Equitable division of remaining assets as outlined. Case closed. She glanced up at me. Lieutenant Vale, remind your sailors someday that truth is the best defense there is. Yes, ma'am, I said. Outside, Mom took my hand as we walked down the courthouse steps. You know what your father said when we first married? She asked. He said, you'll never win an argument with me. She smiled, faint and sure. I guess we finally did. I squeezed her hand. We didn't win an argument, Mom. We won our lives back. She looked toward this courthouse lawn, where the flag rippled in the mild breeze. I thought I'd be happy when it was over, she said softly. But I'm not happy. I'm just lighter. That's enough, I said. We drove home in comfortable silence. At the red light, she started humming again, the same tune she'd hummed trimming roses. That night, after dinner, I sat at my desk and opened the audio diary I'd been recording since the day this all began. The house was quiet except for the cicadas outside. I pressed record. This story isn't about punishment, I said into the mic. It's about boundaries, about how truth can sound like laughter in a courtroom after years of silence. I paused, letting the hum of the night fill the space. If you're listening and you've been where my mother was, shrinking, apologizing for air you breathe, remember this. Silence protects the liar, not the honest. Speak, write, stand. The law still works when you trust it with the truth. I listened to my own breathing for a moment, then added, and if your judge ever laughs, let it be because the truth finally got its turn. I hit save. On the porch, the roses glowed faintly under the light. The air smelled of earth and rain, the simple scent of things that keep growing after storms. I whispered into the night, thank you, Grandpa. Thank you, Navy. Thank you, truth. The crickets answered back, steady and alive.